So this seemingly uninteresting map post ended up getting hundreds of thousands of interactions on Twitter. This map is just breaking down different US states which have hosted the Olympic Games. There's New York, which has only hosted Winter Olympics back in 1932 and 1980. There's Utah, who's also hosted one Winter Olympics back in 2002. Georgia hosted the Summer Olympics back in 96. And then California, which is the only state that hosted both one Winter Olympics and at least one Summer Olympics. And fun fact, we're hosting another one in 2028. That's gonna give us a total of 4. That's crazy. I actually didn't even know we hosted a Winter Olympics back in 1960. No one told me that. But people weren't discussing any of that. People were only discussing one thing, and that is the state of Missouri and the city of St. Louis hosting the Summer Olympics back in 1904. I mean, I gotta admit, that didn't seem like that crazy of an outlier. I mean, Atlanta's a big city. I mean, Salt Lake City hosted something. Okay, St. Louis, well, whatever. But then this reply, St. Louis is basically America's lost city of Atlantis. Going there now, you could never in your wildest dreams fathom that it used to be the center of the world. And that got over 150,000 likes. I only liked it so I could come back to it later. This is St. Louis over 100 years ago. Freaking insane. I had to double check that. I had to make sure this is actually St. Louis. Like, literally looks like France. That's because in 1904, St. Louis hosted the World's Fair, or also known as the Louisiana Purchase Exposition. This honestly is, I gotta admit, it's kind of hard to believe. And I don't even know what St. Louis currently looks like. Apparently not good. How is this the 6th St. Louis autocomplete? What? Holy crap. I've never been to St. Louis, if that was not obvious. I've never even been to Missouri or even anywhere close to that part of the US. It appears St. Louis has had one of the greatest fall-offs in human history. Now, mind you, there's probably a lot that has to do with that. Historically, I can see why St. Louis was important. It basically just comes down to the downfall of the Mississippi. You know, like going through our giant river was no longer as important to us as America anymore. The development of aviation and definitely automobiles made a lot of this stuff kind of useless. The Mississippi River was just not as important to the US anymore. Now, a lot of these replies are saying many of those buildings were made out of very poor quality, very bad material, which is why you can't see them anymore. I mean, even if you look at some of these photos at the time, you can see this stuff probably wasn't gonna last that long. It sounds like the decline of St. Louis is somewhat similar to the decline of Detroit as well, like just manufacturing jobs leaving, which I feel like is the case for a lot of American cities. But it's so fascinating that forever in our history, St. Louis will be the place we hosted our first Olympic Games ever. Even before New York, St. Louis hosted the Summer Olympics almost a full 30 years earlier. This map is just making me really surprised Florida has never hosted a Summer Olympics. How has that been the case? California, New York, I get. Not a single one in Florida though? Kind of crazy.